Thank you so much, Mischka, for agreeing to be part of these podcasts looking at AI and news, specifically in the South African context, with the MDDA really being a central player, particularly in community media. I think we are looking forward to hearing what it is that you have been doing as an entity, and some of the insights that you have on how artificial intelligence is influencing that sector. So, to begin with, there is some research that you have undertaken on AI and the community sector. Can you just give us an overview of what that study looked at, how it was conceptualized, and then who took part in it?
Thank you so much for having us on the podcast, Isanda. I am excited to be here and delve into and share some of the insights from a fascinating research study that was conducted last year by the MDDA, and we managed to complete it this year. And what we broadly looked at was artificial intelligence and journalism in South Africa, looking at newsrooms within community media. And I think that this topic is so crucial at this moment in time because there is currently in South Africa a regulatory and policy vacuum that exists. There's also knowledge gaps in terms of the uptake of AI in the sector more broadly, not just community media. And I think a more focused and contextual study in community media allowed us to address some of the unique challenges that community media faces and also look at some opportunities to make the sector more sustainable, as that is another challenge broadly that we are faced with. Just to broadly go into some of the research objectives that we looked at. Firstly, we aimed to understand the impact of AI on in community media, and we looked particularly at content creation and curation. We looked at aspects of marketing and ad revenue, and we also looked at workforce challenges, whether there's a need for upskilling, reskilling, as well as whether there is a concern for threat to people's livelihoods. And we were able to look to include a number of stakeholders. It was media practitioners who really gave us their lived experiences as well as their perception of AI, so using it on the ground. And then we also looked at managers, their perception of AI and how they see it being integrated into community media. And we also included voices, technologists and AI entrepreneurs, as well as scholars, relevant scholars who have been studying AI practices in everyday news production. And that gave us a little bit more insight into some of the ethical dilemmas that we might be faced with.
So I think, the study sounds fascinating just in terms of its breadth. And the approach that you use, I understand, was mixed methods. So talk us through what it is that you sought to quantify and what some of the qualitative aspects were.
I think, it was necessary for us to do a mixed methods approach because there is a massive knowledge gap when it comes to this topic. Despite a growing interest internationally in AI and journalism, I think if we look at the more localized context of South Africa and Southern Africa, there is a lot of literature that was overlooking some of the unique challenges that maybe community media faces in terms of resource constraints or already being in a debt trap, right? So how would they still look at embracing digital transformation through AI uptake as well? And so we needed to get to those textured narratives. So we looked at survey, and we especially approached journalists, we approached station managers, and then for our qualitative, we looked more at a few journalists it was on field or field work where we went to community media that was in the Eastern Cape, It was in Mpumalanga, it was in Limpopo, as well as in KZN, and Cape Town as well. So we went to the community media, whether it was print or broadcast, and we interviewed a few people there, whether they were from marketing or whether they were journalists that were part of the newsrooms, so that we can have multiple perspectives and voices that we could hear from, especially as it relates to community media. And I think just to share some of the findings of the research, what we found was that at an alarming rate, AI is being used by community media for various processes, though, not just particularly in content creation. So some of the impact on the workflow, participants indicated that AI has significantly altered their workflow processes in the newsrooms. So some of the routine tasks and mundane tasks, they were able to outsource to AI. And this would allow them just to focus on the storytelling or on investigative journalism, which takes a little bit more time. And then audience engagement, I think, was something fascinating that came out of there. So using AI technologies, since most media has already transitioned to online, more digital platforms, they were able to then use AI tools to look at audience interaction, news personalization, which then allowed media houses then to tailor their news feed and also allow them to engage with the various audiences. But this doesn't go without challenges. So the research study that we conducted highlighted several challenges. One, of course, being a thorn in our flesh, which is financial resources, as well as a lack of technical expertise. For instance, a lot of people think that it's just as easy as giving a prompt to generative AI and you will receive the information that you need. But actually crafting those prompts also requires some sort of skill. So not just on the level of, designing the application or looking at certain features of the application, but also basic things like giving the prompt. And then some of the concerns in terms of the ethical concerns, since journalism already has a strict code, ethical code, and journalistic integrity is something that media practitioners take very seriously. There were some concerns how this could impinge on their work as journalists as well. And then, like I mentioned, there is a policy vacuum that exists. So we don't know how to move forward if there isn't a AI governance framework. And I think that there is a lot more to be done in the sector in terms of bringing stakeholders to the table to have a collaborative input on this, because irrespective of whether community media houses a significantly small amount of community media houses have started to think about AI sort of guidelines and policies, maybe we can broadly call it. I think that even if this is done internally, there's still going to need to be regulatory oversight to support media houses. So I think that is one of the most important things that needs to be discussed, and transparency, of course, in how these AI systems are developed, since most of our AI systems, generative AI I'm talking about, is exported from the West and imported to, let's say, for instance, South Africa or the African continent, with data sets that we may be alienated from. So those are some of the concerns that came up during our research.
Mischka, very fascinating study, and we will link to it in the description of this particular podcast. Thank you so much. Really, it's such insightful research, because the community sector, as much as all media are affected, is affected in particular ways. So thank you very much for having joined us today.